Leo, Pancrazzi, and Bernardo, and Peter, Dominic, and Jose, and Roberto. Leo is going to talk about the architectural variability of coarse-grained various systems in a hypertidal environment. Santa Cruz Estuary, Argentina, and Patagonia. Please welcome Leo.
So, good morning. The work that I'm going to present you today is part of my PhD, which focuses on coarse-grained variodynamics and stratigraphy. At the beginning of the PhD, I started working on a barrier spit in northern France, where I combined the GPS survey with diachronic image analysis. After this study, I had the opportunity to work in another analog site in South Patagonia. So the idea of this new study was by performing a large GPS survey, to describe a complex barrier system located at the mouth of the Santa Cruz estuary that has been presented yesterday by Tessier. As well as describe the architecture of this system, we want to have a look to the tidal influence in this kind of environment. So a few words about this estuary. So of course there is a high availability in coarse-grained sediments, and all the sediment is located on a main inlet, which is quite asymmetric. On the south part, the barrier system is relatively small. It's constrained by the cliffs. Whereas in the north area, the system is larger, as it's developed on a very extensive tidal flat. This estuary displays very high tidal range, and dominant winds blow from the west. So I'm going to show you some GPL lines that I do in this in both areas, in the south and the north. So in the south area, as you can see in this image, all the barrier units are oriented typically toward the inner estuary. And I'm going to start by showing you a third GPL line in the most exposed area of this south system. So just a word about the GPL. It was performed with a JCC for 100 MHz ampere. So this line, GPL line, show a well-developed progressional sequence. As you can see, there is a decrease of the elevation of the ridge from about more than 10 meters and almost 7 meters. Reflection are dipping very slowly to seaward, so this is used to. Reflection are ranging from 1 to 4 degrees. And if we look closer to the stratigraphy, we can see that this progressional sequence is composed of several Weill geometries that can be at different elevation in the sequence. So now I'm going to show you another GPL line, but this time in the inner part of this south system, and we can see that it's quite different. We found one more time this very nice progressional sequence. This is visible in the seaward area, but in the landward, due to the aeolian dunes over the ground sequence, it's more difficult to see it. But in the progressional sequence, we see that the speediness of the reflection are higher, between 9 and 12 degrees, and that we can see that there is almost no Weill geometries. So this is from the south area, and now I'm going to show you the north area that is quite more complex. So in this area, we can see that almost all the barrier units are separated each from each other, and between them there is a tidal flat. Most of the barrier units are oriented toward the inner estuary, but there is some of them that are oriented toward the outer estuary, and that is not so typical. Let's start with a few lines in this section. So we can see one more time other very well forced going dipping seaward. And we can also see some landward dipping reflection associated to washover deposit that downlap on a high reflection that here is horizontal, but can be more complex, and this then we cannot see really the washover deposit. So when we look at longshore land across the two previous lines, we see that reflections are on horizontal, but the high reflection here is not so, and we can also see some incision. So we have associated this GPR, so this reflection to the top of the tidal flat. Then in the same kind of unit, but downstream, more at the western part, eastern part, sorry, the reflection are no more horizontal, and we can see the forces going to the west. So this is interesting. Even if we have a look to another speed unit, which is more recent, we can see so I compare the two lines. We see the different reflection, but going to the other side, and this time we can see some top termination associated to some erosional surfaces that we can see in the first line. The last GPR line that I'm going to show you is in the western part of the studied area, and this time we can see one more time this reflection deep towards the inner estuary, but we can see some other ones that are going to the other direction. Then I have a look to the potential tidal indicator that we can see with the GPR data. I take some of the characteristics that have been highlighted by Dashcard, and almost all of the characteristics can be seen with the GPR. But then I try to see if there were really hypertidal indicators. And that's what's quite more difficult. For example, in some case, it's current to see the steep beach face, so with this steep reflection, but it's quite complicated to see the whole beach profile with a steep beach face and a shallow low tide terrace, which is typical for macrotidal environments. Then we have another great characteristic, that is the thickness of the ground section that must be linked to the tidal range. And as the sequence can be developed, we have seen that the thickness can be almost 4 or 5 meters, so it don't really correspond to the tidal range, which is for more than 10 meters. With this study, we have the possibility to add some potential new indicators, and the first one, or the most consistent one, is maybe the visualization of some berm geometries at different elevation. So this can be seen with the GPR and can be really linked to an hypertidal environment. But of course, it only works in wave exposed barriers. And then something that is more unusual but can be seen is the longshore crossbedding. That can be associated to an interaction between waves but also tidal currents along an inlet. So with all this GPR data, all this stratigraphy, we have done this preliminary classification where I associated a barrier morphology with a cross-shore architecture but also a longshore architecture. And as we can see, there is some morphology, barrier morphology that are very, very similar in a cross-shore section. But when we look at the longshore architecture, we can really see some difference, and even more, we can classify, classify with in function of the slope of the faucet. We can have an information about the strength of the coastal bed. And with the three last barrier units, we have the possibilities looking to the close stratigraphy of this longshore line. We can have an information about the storm influence. So it's really important to have this combination of cross-shore and longshore profile to then have information about the morphology, the morphology, and then have information about coastal drift strength and then wave climate. The GPR made possible to visualize most of the tidal indicator, but hypertidal indicators are still unclear or cannot be seen in most of the GPR lines. I want to end this presentation by thanks to our Argentinian colleague Cuitiño and Roberto Scasso, as well as the EIS and my university for the financial support for coming to this congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Weill, for a very interesting talk. We have time for questions.
Here we go. Yeah, excellent presentation, really super interesting study. I was wondering if you did any work with grain size. Did you assess the what influence grain size might have on things like this, the dip of the forceps?
Yeah, it's true that it's very important, and in this estuary there is a large heterogeneity corresponding to the granulometry, and but we have really reduced a well sedimentological study with grain size study because of the field logistic, and we prefer to have a large area in the GPR, but we have some samples, some image of the surface that can give information about. But it's true that there is an important, but we still don't know at which degree.
Thank you for an interesting talk. I just wondered in terms of the dynamics. So often these beach ridges form during like high water events. Do you see any sign of like erosional surfaces in your GPR lines that could indicate that for example they are formed by storms? So you have a erosion surface, and after the storm the system again progrades.
Do you mean in cross-shore section or in long-shore section? In both of them, I mean?
Yeah, it could be both of them, but
Both of them.
in the cross-shore section, maybe.
There is there is a lot of erosional surfaces, but they are not so preeminent in relation to the other one. In long-shore section, it's very, very visible when we look at, for example, the hooks that can be formed in barrel speed. We can see this some really well erosional surfaces, but then in more cross-shore section, it's not so easy to see it. There is some big ones, but not.
Okay, so do you know anything about how fast these beach ridges are forming? So population sickness, how fast can it form in this environment?
As we have seen in the, well, for example, in the south area, when with the different elevation of the ridge, we spot that it's ancient, and I don't know at there are Olsen, just what we can see, but then chronology, we have to do some, yeah.
So we still have some time for one quick question. So, now before moving on to the next topic, okay. So before